Hi everyone, my name is Alyssa. I read and welcome to my channel, and in this video I'm going to be reading some romance sequels. So I read so many series and some of them are romance series, and I'm in the middle of quite a few that I need to catch up on. So I thought in this video I would read some romance sequels. So let's go through the books. So the first book that I'm probably going to get to is Moonlight Seduction by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is the second book in her De Vincent series. This is kind of a contemporary suspense mystery series. We're following the De Vincent family, who is this like billionaire family. They have a very like mysterious mansion that they all live in, and there's kind of like questions of whether the mansion is haunted. In the beginning of book one, we find out that their father commits suicide, so there's a bit of a mystery of like, did he commit suicide? Did he not? What's going on there? And each book has a different little bit of suspense and its own romance, and you question whether like, is it real? Is it paranormal? You know, it's just kind of a fun series, heavy on the romance for sure, and a little bit lighter on the suspense, paranormal, mystery kind of aspect. But I loved book one, so I'm excited to read book two. And this one we're following Nicolette and Gabriel. Nicolette, she is like the cook and butler's daughter, so she like grew up with the family a little bit. And Gabriel is the second oldest, so it's their romance. I'm also going to be reading Devil in Winter by Lisa Kleypas. This is book 3 in the Wallflower series. So far, so good with this series. I gave book 1 and 2 4 stars, and I listened to them on audiobook. And this one I'm thinking of physically reading. So in this one, we're following Evie, and she asks Sebastian, yes, that's his name, if he's willing to marry her, like have a marriage of convenience. She's desperate to run away from her family because they're abusive to her. She's not in a safe situation. And Sebastian, he is, I was going to say a rascal. Sebastian, he is a rake. He is a notorious rake, and he actually kidnapped her best friend, one of the Wallflowers from the previous book, to kind of run away and get married with. So he has a bit of a reputation. He doesn't have a good reputation, especially with the Wallflowers. But Evie is so desperate to get away from her situation, so she's willing to do whatever it takes in order to find independence. So I'll be reading this. The last book I'm going to read is Woodrose Mountain. This is book 2 in the Hope Crossing series. Each of these books is like a standalone. That's pretty much true for all of these. I would still recommend reading these in order, but for Hope's Crossing, you really don't need to. They kind of catch you up on what's happened. Book 2, we're following another Evie, funny enough, and she used to be like a physiotherapist, and she put that behind her because of a tragedy that's happened to her. And so she's moved to Hope Crossing to kind of heal her heart, but she gets sucked into helping Brody's daughter, who was in an accident in the previous book, and she needs rehab and she has to do it at home. So it's Evie and Brody's romance. It's a very like sweet contemporary setting, mountain setting, which is really cool, small town romance. So those are the books that I'm going to be reading, and I'm going to start with Moonlight Seduction. So I read half of Moonlight Seduction. You know what? At first, I wasn't really sure how I was feeling because it wasn't as light and fun as book 1. Now, there was still like a serious tone in book 1, but this one, it's a little bit more serious. So the overarching idea of the series is that we're following this very rich family. They're called the De Vincent family, and they're like billionaires essentially. Extremely wealthy family with kind of a bit of a reputation, specifically with their mansion. People think that their mansion's haunted and mysterious things happen, and there's like a family curse. And it's also set in New Orleans, so there's kind of like this paranormal element question. It's a suspense series, so there's usually some kind of mystery happening. You don't know if it is real or paranormal, like the freaky things happening at the mansion, are they ghosts or is someone out to kill someone or something like that, right? So in the beginning of book 1, which isn't a spoiler because it happened in book 1, the father, who was head of the family and the head of the family business, died and is assumed a suicide, but there's questions around, is it actually suicide, is it not? In book 1 we follow Lucien and his romance, and this one we're following Gabe, who is kind of like the middle son. So it's 3 sons and then I think a younger daughter, or no, Lucien and the daughter are twins. Gabe is the second child, and then Devlin is the oldest child. And so this was more serious because this romance is between Gabe and Nikki. Nikki, she is the daughter of the housekeeper and the butler. The housekeeper and the butler, they're married. They had Nikki. So she kind of like grew up in this home, in this mansion. She knew the brothers growing up, and there's this huge age difference. So she is 10 years younger than Gabe. And honestly, I was like really uncomfortable, and I still am a little. I'm like softening a little bit, but I was really uncomfortable about the relationship because Gabe knew her growing up and they were close growing up. So when she was a tween and teenager, they were really, really close, and it was kind of known that she's always loved him or had like this huge crush, and like everyone knew about it. And there was an incident between her and Gabe like the night before she left for college. So she was 18, but especially in the beginning of the story, like I was feeling like really uncomfortable. I was just like not sure how I felt about it, and I'm still a little uneasy. I'm kind of just pretending that it's not bothering me. I'm just like not trying to think too much about it and just read the story. It's not my favorite romance. I really enjoyed book 1 a lot more. So she's back and she's taking her mother's place because her mother has cancer, so she can't work and they need a replacement. It's hard for them to find staff because all the mysterious things that have been happening. Like there was big drama that happened in book 1, which, you know, makes the mansion even like more suspicious. There's always secrets, things like that. And so they need someone to take over her mom's position, and since she like knows the job really well, she is a perfect fit. But between this messy romance and like her family drama with her mother, and then there's people who are just like terrible to Nikki. In the beginning, Gabe was really hard on Nikki because of their past relationship. Devlin was really harsh with her because of her feelings for Gabe. And then Devlin has a fiance and she is so rude to her. And then not just that, but the fiance's brother has like sexually assaulted her in the past, and you're always kind of nervous if he's going to be around, and he's been like sniffing around her and he's like threatening her. Like, so there's a lot of like anxious things about this, plus her life has been threatened. Like she fell down the stairs and it's like, who pushed her kind of thing. And so it's not like light and fun. Book 1 worked a lot better because the romance was just fun and lighthearted. You still have suspense plots and mysteries, which are a little ominous and like, what's going on? But I felt like the romance really balanced that out because it was just more on the lighter side and fun, where this is like the romance is heavy, the suspense is heavy, the drama with her family and like her relations with the fiance and her brother, like it's just a lot. So I was unsure whether or not to continue. Like I thought about not finishing this because like I was just like feeling anxious the whole time. I'm like, this isn't fun, and like I'm a little icked out, to be honest. It's like the writing's really easy. Like I really like Jennifer Armentrout's writing. Like it's really easy to get into. It is mostly fun. I enjoy the reading experience, so I'm not like hating it or anything. And I did kind of wonder like, okay, should I just push through so I like know what the mysteries are? Because I think I am gonna really enjoy book 3. I'm curious to see Devlin's story because he is like so uptight and like super strict about the business and the family, and he's like business first kind of. He's kind of like taking after his father, and so I'm kind of curious to see what his romance would be like, because it'd be interesting to see him. It's clear that the third book is going to be for him, and he's probably not going to end up with his fiance because she's just like not good for him, right? Yeah, I don't know where I'm sitting right now. Like maybe a 3. Like I don't like actually hate it, but I'm just like, it's not super fun. Yeah. So I have a couple updates. I did finish Moonlight Seductions yesterday, and honestly I'm a little torn on how I feel. I'm leaning somewhere between like 3.5 and 4. And I think the more I think about it, I think it's more of a 4-star because I really like this world and I do really like Jennifer L. Armentrout's writing, and I think she's really good at what she does. I think the problem was more me. It was a very serious story, where in book 1, I think I've said this already, but book 1, the romance was more on the lighter side and just fun. And then the serious stuff when it comes to the suspense, I think it was a good balance, where this, like the romance itself was more serious because of their history. And then I had a bit of the ick factor of the age gap. Now I have read age gap stories before, but I think I just prefer it where they meet as adults. Even if she's 18, at least they're both adults. But here they've known each other since she was little, and they had a relationship when she was a teenager, and you know, she was always in love with him. And even though nothing happened until she was 18, I still felt like really uncomfortable. And I just felt like she couldn't have it both ways, because she tried to make it where, you know, he wasn't grooming her, but then right when she's like turned 18 or around when she's 18, they had a physical relationship. So I can't help but feel like he was kind of, I don't think he intended to. I think from his point it was just a friendship, but he knew that she liked him. So I don't know, I just couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable there. But like, I feel like once they stopped focusing on their history and they just focused on the relationship, I enjoyed it more. And I feel this way when it comes to book 1 as well. But I feel like the suspense and the mystery takes a backseat. The romances in this series is very much like the main focus. Everything kind of comes to a head near the end of the book. I don't know if she took him back too easily. There was still some groveling happening here. Also, I have to mention, there is sexual, physical assault, attempted rape in here. Like, it's heavy. I was like so shocked that she went the direction she did. Like, it's on page, so like you have to be aware of that. And I was just kind of like jaw dropped, surprised that it was like on page in here. So obviously if those are triggers for you, like, stay clear. I was kind of overwhelmed that that happened. So this was a very like serious installment in the series. I am excited for book 3 because I think it's going to be more lighter. You got to see who the heroine is, and they meet for the first time in here. It's just kind of like in passing. They just kind of have like a few words together that you see, and it's, sorry if you hear my laundry machine. What's her name? Nikki's friend. She's older than Nikki. So I think she's like in her early 30s. She's like into voodoo. Like, she goes to places and like, I don't really know if I understand it, but like she has like a job doing some kind of like voodoo, like discovering spirits and places kind of thing. So I'm kind of curious about that because their house is considered like haunted and they have like a curse. And I read the synopsis for book 3 and it wasn't really clear like what the plot's gonna be. Also, I predicted the suspense mystery part. I wasn't too surprised, but that's okay. It was still fun. I still liked it. So I think I probably will give this 4 stars. I'm so sorry that if you can hear my laundry machine. thing is quieting down. It's like in the basement and you can still hear it. It's crazy. So I moved on to Dublin Winter and I'm like really liking this. I'm kind of surprised because books 1 and 2, I gave them 4 stars, so it's not like I found them bad, but I feel like this is more fun and I really like the chemistry between Sebastian and Evie. Actually, I should start off. So this is the Wildflower series. So the Wildflower series features 4 girls and they consider themselves the Wildflowers because they've been finding it hard to find a husband, and so they decide to band together to help each other find a husband. And so this is book 3 and we're following Evie and she's very quiet. She has a stammer and a stutter, and she has a really hard life. The family that she's been living with treats her terribly, and you get to learn more about what her background is actually like. Her father actually owns a gambling den, and her mother ran away from her family to marry him, and then she died in childbirth. And when she was older, kind of like, I think when she became a teenager, he sent her away to live with her parents, with her mother's parents, or maybe her sister, I don't remember, but she's been living with her mother's family and they treat her terribly. Like, it's almost like they're still mad that their daughter ran away, and so they're physically and verbally abusive to her. You don't see any physical abuse. You see a scene where they're verbally abusive to her, but she kind of tells the story of that they're not treating her well. So she runs away. The plan was for her to marry her cousin, who is clear wouldn't treat her well, and so when things started progressing, she decides just to fully run away, and she runs to Sebastian St. Vincent. He is a viscount and he's desperate need of money because his father is not running the duke. I think his father's a duke, so his father isn't running the dukedom really well, so he's gonna not have an allowance anymore, and so he's in need of a rich wife. He is a notorious rake, the rakish of the rake, the rakiest of the rakish. He actually kidnapped her friend from book 2 at the end. That was kind of like the suspense plot of book 2, and so he has a bad reputation, but she is so desperate. Like, she is so desperate to get away from that family that she's willing to throw herself in the power of him, and she just has this sense that he won't actually hurt her. Even though he kidnapped Lillian in book 2, it was kind of like obviously he shouldn't have done that, but he didn't hurt Lillian or anything like that. So she even goes out and asks, like, would you have R-word her? He said, no, I wouldn't have. So it kind of clears up some things there. So she runs away and they run to Scotland, and you just see them so far. I'm only like 100 pages in. You see them traveling to Scotland, and it's really interesting because you kind of hear that in historical fiction, or specifically historical romances, where if they want to elope, they have to escape to Scotland. And you kind of get to see the customs a little bit of what it's like to elope there. And it's just funny, but they are kind of like on the run to Scotland because she is afraid that her family will find her and catch her. So they decide to travel to Scotland nonstop. And it just sounds like a terrible experience because you're in the carriage and it's like a 2-day drive or carriage ride there, but it's not comfortable because you're in a carriage and it's horse drawn and all that. And so yeah, I'm really liking their dynamic. So they have consummated the marriage, but she's made the decision that she doesn't want to sleep with him anymore because she doesn't want to get hurt by him. And so she made it clear that she doesn't want to have any more relations with him. And so they're having this kind of like push and pull a little bit. It's very clear that he finds her extremely attractive and finds her endearing, and he's been like really sweet and caring for her, which I'm loving, but she's also very stubborn, which kind of rubs him the wrong way, and he's just so used to everyone, or like all women, kind of falling at his feet, but she's like not doing that and sticking up for herself. And another reason why she desperately wants to have more freedom is she wants to take care of her father who is dying, and that's going to be her inheritance, is probably from his gaming hell. I don't know how that will work, but that's where her dowry will come from. But he's dying and her family wasn't letting her go see him, and he doesn't have much time left. So I am really liking it. I think fun is the wrong word, but there are some like funny moments in here that I found myself laughing. So, and they have really good banter, which I really like. So yeah, this is going really well so far. I'm really excited.
Girl remains sleeping in that uncomfortable position, or wake her up and take her inside for a real rest.
So it's time to update. Unfortunately, I have been doing a terrible job updating this vlog because it is like 1 or 2 weeks later. Like, yeah, life got really busy, and so I just dropped the ball. But I did finish Devil in Winter, and I did really like this a lot. This is my favorite so far in the series. It was an interesting experience because I physically read this and I didn't physically read the other books, and I wondered if physically reading is the way to go for the series for me. Like, I wonder if I read the other 2 books, if I would have rated them higher. I was really obsessed with this book. I really liked it. It was a lot more serious than I thought it was going to be. There was moments in the beginning of the story that were a lot more lighthearted and I found myself laughing, but then the tone definitely did shift to be more serious, especially when it came to the stuff about Evie's past and like her growing up in a very abusive family and then her father dying, and then there was kind of like someone got sick. I won't go into that to spoil too much, but there was that element of it. And so there was a lot of like serious stuff happening in here. But Sebastian like fell for Evie so hard. And that was one of my favorite things about the story. It's just like how like obsessed he was with her. He fell so hard for her. And Evie like really fell for him too. And it was them kind of figuring out how to be together and how to accept that, I guess you could say. And, you know, it got to the point where she felt like she couldn't live without him. And I love how, you know, he tries to push her away, but she just like doesn't let him. She is like, no, like, and he's so weak to her. So I just love that part. I'm giving it a 4.5 because I kind of wish it was a little bit more lighthearted and fun. It was a very serious tone. And then there was this whole suspense plot that was kind of not thrown in, but like, I'm not sure how I feel about the suspense plots of these stories. They're so minor and kind of like a throwaway in a sense. But I guess she uses the suspense plot to kind of have a 3rd act breakup. So yeah, but it's my favorite so far in the series. I'm giving it 4.5. Another thing I have to say is there is some racism in here when it comes to Romani people. There's a character in here who's Romani, and they use the G word in here. This is an older title, so like, or I should say an older version. I've heard that she's kind of re-releasing this with a lot like censoring the kind of racist language. Definitely like taking the G word out. I've heard that before. I don't know if it's actually true or not, but that's what I've heard. So maybe get a newer version. Maybe they're just editing the audiobooks. I'm not really sure. But it was definitely in here, and the racist tone was just more talking about stereotypes and assuming things because of who he is or what his race is. So it is in here. He's a prominent side character, and he's going to be the hero in book 4. So I'm really excited. There was an amazing scene with him and Daisy, and I'm like so obsessed. Like, I'm so excited for their book. I assume it's going to be kind of similar problematic kind of language in here. People like him in here, so it's not like a reflection of the author. It's more like a reflection of its time, if that makes sense. So there's that. But I love him as a character, and I love him for Daisy. I'm so excited. Their scene was so good. Like, it was one of my favorite parts of the story. So like, I'm really obsessed with them. So I'm really excited for the next story. So 4.5. I did start Rayanne Thine, but this is book 2 in the Hope Crossing series. I think it's called Wood Rose Mountain, and I'm not that far along. And we are following Evie as well. That is so weird. I didn't even pick up on that. We're following Evie in this one too. That's so funny. And then Brody. Okay, yeah, Evie and then Brody, and then his daughter's name is Taryn. So Evie, she moved to Hope's Crossing a couple years back. She's dealing with heavy grief. Like, she lost someone in her life, and it's kind of related to her line of work. She was like a physiotherapist, helping people with rehab and teaching them how to like walk again, and sometimes people like can't speak, and that was her line of work. And then she actually, you don't know it at first, but you slowly, I haven't read much, so I don't think it's a spoiler, but I think it's, from what I understand, she adopted someone with severe, I guess, injuries, and she was basically her daughter's therapist, and her daughter, I think, died, and so she moves to Hope Crossing to just heal. She refuses to do her line of work anymore. She's just like lost the passion for it, and she's just like so grief-stricken. So she moved to Hope Crossing, and she works at the bead store, who is run by the heroine from book 1. And it's like a small town setting, mountain town, very touristy kind of setting. But she works at the bead shop. We have Brody, and Brody's daughter got in an accident from book 1. Kind of just hear about it in book 1. And her name is Taryn, and she suffered a brain injury. And she has struggles speaking, and obviously with mobility, and she was in like a therapy house kind of thing, or she was at a facility where she was staying there, and they were helping her with her rehab, and they kind of are kicking her out. They're kind of saying they've brought her to a certain point and she's not really willing to keep working, and so he has to bring her home. And he's like redoing his house to make like a therapy space for her, and like redoing the bathroom so it would help her kind of, or work for her needs. And from my understanding, he's like a businessman. He is very well off. He and Evie have like butt heads like over the years, but there's like obviously some kind of like chemistry there between them. So it's a bit of a hate to love. He's like basically begging her to like help his daughter, and she's like so reluctant, for one thing because of like the way they interact, but also like she's just so nervous, I guess, or just like she just can't picture herself doing it. She's really reluctant, but she promised to like help him at first and help him find someone. So it's pretty clear that she's probably gonna stick around and that they're gonna fall in love. I haven't quite met Darren yet, his daughter, but we got to the point where she's gone to his house and kind of like telling him kind of like what he needs to do in order to accommodate for her. And there's been, I don't know, there's been like some like, I wouldn't even say bantering. He's like snapped at her kind of thing, but he's been in like really stressful situation where he's like bringing his daughter home and he's been like struggling. So I'm sure they're going to bond over their shared grief, because she's experienced pretty much the same thing that he's experiencing now. And she's like best friends with his mom, which is so funny. Like, she met his mom through like beading conventions or something. Like, I guess there's a beading community in the world. They met and she encouraged her to move to Hope's Crossing. So yeah, it's okay. Like, I'm not sure how I feel. I'm like at the very beginning. I'm like barely, I've read like maybe 2 or 3 chapters. So we're gonna see how it goes. I'm not nearly as eager as I was in book 1, but I'm willing to give it a shot and see how I feel. So I'm gonna keep going.
She refused to have it any other way. This is Carly Robbins. We hope you have enjoyed this unabridged production of Wood Rose Mountain by Rayanne Thane.
So it's time to update because I did finish Woodrose Mountain by Ray, and I think it's Rayanne Thane. I think that's what the audiobook said. And you know what? It was just okay. I feel bad saying that, but that's kind of just how I felt. I was glad to be back in this world, I guess you can say. I was happy to be back in this mountain, small town. It's very cutesy. I liked being back at the bead store and things like that. And this one we're following Evie, and she decides to help out Brody, whose daughter is needing a physiotherapist. She's helping her recover, helping her to relearn how to walk and talk and use fine motor skills and things like that. So she decides to take on this job just temporarily before they find someone else who can take over the position. And she's been really reluctant because a past hurt. She lost a daughter that she adopted, and you know, so she came to Hope Crossing to recover, essentially. My favorite parts of the story was mostly like the small town and her interactions with the daughter and her kind of getting to know the family and her getting over her grief and things like that. Like, I really liked kind of like the contemporary part of the story. Unfortunately, like, the romance just didn't do it for me. It was supposed to be a hate to love, and it just felt very heavy-handed. They tried to like really convince you that they hated each other, but the thing is, you didn't really get to see a lot of examples of that. They basically just told you that, and then they had one interaction which was kind of a little bit heated, like not really, and then that was kind of it. And then they had some like romantic moments, and that was kind of it. I didn't feel it. I specifically the romance part. So in a lot of ways, like, my enjoyment level, like, I liked the story. I would have given it like a 4-star if I enjoyed the romance more, but I didn't. So I think I'm leaning towards like a 3 or 3.5. I feel like 3.5 is like a more accurate kind of rating for how I feel. There was moments that I enjoyed myself, like, I will definitely say that. And it was interesting to see the fallout of this accident. Like, there was a trial regarding the person who was at fault for this accident that happened in book 1. So I did enjoy all those aspects of the story, and I liked being in this town, but the romance just didn't do it for me. So that was kind of unfortunate. I really liked book 1. That's the thing. And the reason was for the romance. So I'm wondering if I need to be more choosy when it comes to the romance, like, written by this author, if I need to like read what the story is and then go into this, because I wasn't sure if I was like super excited about this story. Yeah, I don't know. Like, it was technically like single dad, and I don't know, it didn't work for me. So 3.5, unfortunately. So unfortunately we're ending this video on a downer, but like 3.5 is still like a decent rating. Like, it's not like I hated this book. There was nothing wrong with it. It was just, it didn't quite work for me. So I had a 4.5 star. So this was a win. And then another 3.5, which kind of sucks. And then Woodrose Mountain was also 3.5. So, oh well, but I'm continued on with these series, which is great. And I will be continuing on with these series. Like, I feel like I need to give Rayanne Thane more of a chance. And I know I'll like other Jennifer L. Armentrout, so I'm not worried about that. But I think I need to give Rayanne Thane like a couple more tries to see if she's for me. Like, maybe she'll be more of a hit and miss author, I don't know. Also, I should say, like, her romances are like very clean. Like, they're like clean romances, no smut whatsoever. And then they're kind of like sweet romances. So I think you have to like know what kind of level of sweet you want. But they're like, this one was like very sweet, maybe a little bit too sweet for me. Anyways, that's the end of this reading vlog. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've read any of these books before, please comment down below. I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions about them. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you have not done so. You can follow me on Goodreads and Instagram. And you know what? I want you to keep reading. Bye.